I think I heard what I felt. I heard a wow over here.
Yes.
Arne is one of Agape's sacred treasures. I'm blessed to be a student of Michael Bernard Beckwith and also a student of Ricky Byers Beckwith as a choir member.
That's right.
So I love the community that has been a part of birthing this community. Let's be very clear that this community is connected to Agape International Spiritual Center because it is a part of one of the many jewels that has been birthed. So just like any family, when a child has been born and it goes out on its own, or you have family members, I know in my community, sometimes there are young people that come over the house all the time when we're kids and start calling your mom, mom, start calling your dad, dad, and when they go out into the world, they grow up and they look at your house as home. And that's very much what Soul Center is. So to be here on a regular basis with the band, they're jamming as usual. That vibration is amazing, so we love Arne. And then I'm honored just to stand before you again with this opportunity to share a little something in these very uncertain times. It's a very interesting day we live in. And I find myself constantly aware of who I am. Who I am in the limited views that I have of myself. Who I am in expanded views of myself. Because a lot of times we're going through this journey that we call life and we call the human experience. And so much of it is causing us to take our attention away from God. Now, when I'm saying taking our attention away from God or Spirit, be very clear. What I'm referring to is the infinite. What I'm referring to is the source of everything. What I'm referring to is that author and that creator, that force, however we look at it, however we want to articulate it, there are so many patterns and there's so many exquisite examples in creation of replicated forms and ways that things are balanced. If you've ever been into a kid's room where you remember what your room was like, you know that there is a reason why there's order and there's a reason why there's disorder. And when you live in a universe like we do, and you can see the order, if you step back, you begin to recognize that there must be something underneath it all. Now, over the evolution of humankind, we've called it many different things. Just like when we were children, we called things different things. Sometimes it was, where I grew up, sometimes it was the red stuff. And then it was the red drink. And then eventually it became Kool-Aid. Because it had a brand name. And then we stopped drinking so much of that. And maybe we drank some juice. But at different stages of our evolution, we've called the source a different name. Sometimes we focused on it as being gender-like and always referred to God as He. And then there have been communities and teachings where they focused God as she. But if we recognize how the Creator has designed itself, we recognize that it's always had both. In all of creation, it always has had both. So it must be both. It must be that and. So as we continue to look at this and we take this on, I looked at everything that was coming at me and I realized one of the things that I'm always remembering is it's got to be all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It really has to be all of it.
Yes.
It has to be all of it. It can't be the things that are only in the sunshine. Because there are amazing things that are happening in the dark.
Yes.
And it can't only be the easy things, because there are amazing things that are birthed through the difficult, painful, challenging trials and experiences that we have in life.
Yes.
And so today, the topic that I'm speaking from is all or no thing. Because really, in essence, life really is all or no thing. You're either going to take all of it in, or you're going to leave some segment of it out. So we're speaking about a family, and one kid is acting up, and everybody else is hunky-dory, functioning fine, no screaming and yelling, but we've got that one kid in the house that's screaming and yelling. We can't just leave that one kid out. It's all of us, because even if we do leave that kid out, we all still know in the back of our mind that part of our family is missing.
Yes.
That someone within our family is not being included. And so when we think about the things that we've gone through in life, there are some stories that we love to tell about how we got here and how we met so-and-so. When relationships come up and we talk about all the good things and all the good times. But it isn't always that way. And sometimes it's more important to tell the stories about the challenges and the more difficult experiences that we've had, because we also still have the good times. And so recently, one of the things that I've become more aware of, and just in friends, is an opportunity to use my voice to speak to things. I'm doing that now. And so I had an inspiration to write something in social media the other day. And I watched what my response was before I wrote it, while I wrote it, and then what the response was from the public community that is connected to me on social media. And it was very specific. I knew what I was doing, I knew the intent behind it, and I was curious, somewhat interested, but kind of curious to see what the response would be like from people who know me, all aspects. I believe that the people who it was written to would receive it. And that's really important, because whenever we look at spiritual books, whenever we look at the Bible, whether we look at the Torah, whether we look at the Quran, whether we look at the Upanishads, we must remember those were all written to very specific groups of people at very specific times and cultures in a very unique time in human history. If you don't utilize that awareness, then you can't possibly understand what those things are trying to communicate to you. If you read a letter from Abraham Lincoln today, as if it was being written to America in 2016, we hope that some of the challenges that Abraham Lincoln is talking about might not be our challenges today. So it's something to look at as you grow in your own spiritual study, in your own spiritual walk, as you take on this information that we call life. And so what I wrote was very specifically an appreciation letter and a reminder to black women that they are beautiful, that they are loved, that they are amazing, that they are powerful, that I love them, that I'm here for them. Now, I got one message in my direct message box. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then all of my black women friends that I know that might have seen it, liked it, showed comments, shared how they felt about it, shared their appreciation for it. And then I watched my non-black female friends and non-black male friends like it, love it, and share it. Because, I'll get to that in a minute. And then I got to the one message that I knew would come, because as a person who is very clear that I have absolutely no separation in my life, in terms of I categorize groups of people over here and separate them, and I don't categorize people over here and separate them, I also know that I'm not a cactus in a rose garden. And what I mean by that is, this, if it were a cactus, it's not designed to be a rose, but it has a purpose in existence as a cactus. And it should do everything it's designed to be as a cactus, and should not suddenly pretend that it is just a flower or that it is just a plant. And the person who harvests cactus and utilizes it in cooking or utilizes it in the middle of the desert isn't hoping the cactus is a rose, because that cactus might have water in the middle of the desert and it's doing its cactus business. And so when somebody needs that little bit of water that it might be holding inside of it, it can cut it off, pour that water out and drink it. Rose, not so much. But the cactus is being a cactus. And me, I was born into this world in a particular unique form. In our country, we consider that form the form of a black man. And so I come from a family, just so happens that both of my parents are black. That's the design of my creation and my incarnation. All of you have some label or some identifier that you recognize. So if I take the opportunity to speak to a particular group of people, here's what I want people in our teaching to recognize. We have a principle that's very clear that I could see people embracing, which is called oneness. There is a recognition that there is no separation between any of us. Now that recognition and that awareness means at all times what is for this person is for me. What is spoken to about this person, what is true about Arne, must also be true about Patricia. The universe, as they say, is no respecter of persons. And so if something is spoken to about a particular person or a particular group, and it's truth, meaning, and I've talked about this here before, truth not just being something that is accurate or a fact, truth being something that is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Truth being something that is eternal. If it is true, then it is true about me, and it is true about John, and it is true about Philip. It is true about Amy. So what I noticed was women who were not black that could appreciate it. They liked it, they shared it. I had one woman who's a minister in the community that I come from, asked if she could share with other black women that she knew. And what I also noticed was that other people recognized that that may have been written to black women, but they could receive it for themselves too.
Yes.
And so it brought to mind the situations that we're dealing with in our world today. Far too often, people are going through experiences, and that's happening to them over there. And because it is happening to them over there, it doesn't have anything to do with me. This is in complete contrast to the principle of oneness.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely in contrast to creation. And how do you see this? The things that are happening in the polar ice caps are absolutely affecting us down here. The things that are happening to the rainforest are absolutely affecting us here, because while we have different ecosystems around the planet, the balance of those ecosystems allows the whole planet to thrive. But if some of it, think about your body, if your knee is a little creaky, I'm getting a little older now, my knee creaks once in a while, the rest of my body is impacted. If you're a chiropractor, you notice, your chiropractor might tell you, oh, your foot or your ankle's been bothering you. Why? Well, this side of your body is a little stronger than the other because you've been overworking this side to compensate for the other. That's what's happening in our society. So often, because we don't come together around the parts of our communities and our societies that are in need of us, that different things happen and it causes us to get out of balance. Then when we ignore those parts because we don't think that they're important, that's how we really get stringent, how we really get the tears, how we get the caverns that open up between the groups. Because we really do feel like we could live on an island. Except for when you live on an island, your island must import the things that you don't grow on your island. Hawaii is a very expensive place to visit and live. And it has nothing to do with how long it takes to get there, because there are a lot of impoverished people who live on the island of Hawaii. But Hawaii doesn't produce much. So Hawaii must import everything. And so it is with us. In some of our communities, we're experiencing some of this change and turmoil. But if we look at things really clearly through a spiritual principle like oneness, we get to see why it's happening and how it's unfolding. The reality is, there is no them and they. There is only us. There is only we.
Yes.
There is no theirs. There is only ours.
Correct.
Now here's the thing about life. Some people woke up the other day and felt like the whole world had gone to shift. That's right. Shift. As they say, shift happens. And I like that phrase for many reasons, of course. But the reality is, it's either all or nothing. Either everything is happening for a reason or none of it.
Yes.
So when people start challenging religious groups or people who say they believe something, it's like, oh, you believe it in terms of this and not in terms of that. I understand. Because there must be some consistency in something that considers itself the source of creation. Now, I'm not necessarily arguing with the presence, but I'm going to ask it to show itself to me. And it's going to do that. So here's an example. Everything in creation is useful. Even the stuff that lands in our toilet. That's how exhaustive creation is. I walked home the other day, and it's winter time, so people who are taking care of the lawns kind of know what happens this time of year, or they know what happens in the neighborhood, and suddenly I had that wonderful odoriferous smell of cow manure. Now, when they talk about this time of year, Thanksgiving, a lot of times people say, we use the whole pig, the whole hog, we use it from the rooter to the tutor. And they use all of it, basically, is what that saying means. Now, that's literally true. That we've come to understand how creation is built, that people can feed and nourish their body temples. You can have judgment about whether or not they eat the pig or not. From the beginning to the end of it, and even the things that it excretes out of its body in terms of bodily waste. That bodily waste from animals, from even humans, helps us to have the other food that we want. We call it organic. It's true. And it's just a natural part of what's going on. Now, the reason I bring up that part of existence is because a lot of times we feel like that is how some of our life events are. Sometimes we feel like it's just crap. We just don't like it. It's painful. We don't want it. We don't want it around. Anybody remember that original pain when your teeth started growing in? You probably don't remember it. But we just had a little infant run out of here, over there in the back. And most of you have heard an infant cry. Now, they cry for many reasons, and one of them is because their teeth are bursting through the skin in their mouth, and through their gums, and it's painful. Now, some of you have friends who no longer have teeth in their mouth. They wish they had them. They wish they still had their teeth, because that was a good process. It worked really well. Chewing's a good thing. So we look at the different experiences and events in life, and we must hold them in context. We have to have a realization about what is unfolding. So again, it's either all or nothing. So the challenges, the difficulties, the pain. There has never been in my lifetime the kind of reaction to a person being elected president that I'm witnessing and experiencing. Now, I'm not even here to talk about how a person voted, because what I am excited about is the energy.
Yes.
There is an energy and an awareness and an awakeness across the board that I don't know would have happened if things had gone another way.
Yeah.
Now, I have absolutely no time to spend in judgment. I have lots of time to spend observing what I see and what information I can gather through what's emerging, and what I see is an awakening. What I see is activity. What I see is energy. What I see is young people awake and involved, and not necessarily sitting at home in front of the TV playing video games. Though there's a place and time for that, I'm also seeing men and women coming together and speaking up against things that they don't want in their world and in their communities. And I'm knowing absolutely because the shift is happening. Because certain things are happening and unfolding. You could probably pin it on the election, but the election is just a symptom of what's going on. It's just showing you what was already underneath the surface. We were saying that for 8 years under the previous president, or the current president. All of a sudden, all this stuff that we didn't know existed, or some of us didn't know existed, rose up to the surface. Now, when a woman was running for president, regardless of how we thought about her, we also saw some other stuff rise to the surface. And how we suddenly look at a woman. And it's going to continue to happen. Because we're witnesses to our own society. We're able to see things. We're waking up. So I said I got one message about the post that I made. And it was a real loving and sincere inquiry. The person asked, what inspired that? Because in their mind, they knew they had a lot of respect for me, and they held me in very high esteem in their mind. So they wanted to understand why I was just writing to black women. I was like, got one. And this person was open, and they were sincere. And so they were asking if there was some particular news item that had happened to black women that inspired this. God. Because what this person had no clue of is what black women deal with on a regular basis. How it's different than her experience as a non-black woman. She had no clue. And what I realized was, it doesn't require an event to write something like that, number one. Number two, there's already enough going on in the experiences of black women in particular, women in general, and human beings all together, that it's worth writing and owed that way. And it's also wonderful for me to witness how many people are able to see it for themselves and accept it for themselves. So when people write stories about the journey of African kidnapped from Africa in America, also called slaves, when they write that story or you hear those things, as an American, those are your stories. That's the story of your country. The same stories that you hear about the Native Americans, those are your stories. In current situations, when we hear what's happening in immigration, those are our stories. When we hear what's happening to Muslims, those are our stories. There is no separation in oneness. We don't have to do as others do. I'm a single man. I don't expect you as a married man to do at home what I do at home. I'm a little messy. Your wife might not like that. But in reality, what happens in the home is one thing. But the recognition of our absolute oneness and our connection with each other must be clear. When you see some grandmother walking across the street, you must recognize that that's your grandmother.
Yes.
You must recognize that that's your peer.
Yes.
That's the only way that this society continues to grow and expand and evolve. The reason why we come together in a society is because at some point we agreed that us coming together is better than us being apart.
Yes.
That's what happened in civilization. There were all these small little groups and tribes spread out in different areas, and these two come together, and this group had developed irrigation, and this group over here had developed crop rotation, and these groups over here developed different things in community. And then they came together. And then there were some other challenges. And there were other difficulties. And some people built walls. And some people stood together. And some people found a way to recognize that absolutely it is either all or nothing. There's either all of us together, or there's absolutely nothing here that we can stand on. We teach from a book originally called The Science of Mind. And Ernest Holmes helps us to really exquisitely shape and form an idea that our belief systems, that the way we live in life, can be approached scientifically. You put it down. And in science class, you remember, every great science teacher had you doing experiments. And so prayer, meditation, visioning, giving yourself a sacred service, tithing, giving your sacred offerings into your community are all things that they're spiritual practices that you take on. And when you're having struggles in your finances and in prosperity in your life, and you find yourself in community, the best thing you can do is, well, what are the spiritual principles around finance? Giving, sharing, circulating the energy that has been coagulated into a coin, a dollar, or a check. And you circulate it, because anything that gets stagnant gets stuck.
Yes.
And so you experiment with these principles and these teachings. Experiment with affirmative prayer.
Yes.
Actually apply it into your life. Speak it into being. And watch how your family changes. You don't have to... See, the thing about this teaching is, we're not asking you to go change anybody. The testimony that we heard at the beginning of the service is exactly how it works. I found a new spiritual community. I started being active in the community. Joy returned to me, inspiration returned to me, financial abundance returned to me, and I love this place.
Yes.
some reward, like a carrot out there in front of her, like, come on, heaven's right around the corner, just give a little more. You know, just save one more soul. No souls are lost. None of us are broken. We may need healing to realign ourselves in the shape and form that we've been designed in, and the gifts that we've been here to bring. But the reality is, as one of our friends sings, he has a song called You're Perfect. Jamie Lula, it's an amazing song, and it's just, you're perfect, exactly as you are. And in the next stage, as you gain a new skill, or as you release another habit that doesn't serve you, guess what? You're perfect. And so today, take a step. Look around. Everything that you see, those challenging stories in the news, some of the sadness, some of the morose, some of the depression, some of the anger, some of the rage, all of the joy, all of the love, all of it is going to serve a higher expression of our society, of our world, and of our individual lives. Accept that today as a principle that you can live and walk out and try it for yourself. Because in the end, this week, I guarantee you will see multiple occasions where you get the choice.
Yes.
It's either all or nothing.
Yes.
Easy like So I'm going to speak a word of prayer in a moment, and the ushers are going to take their place. As the ushers come, we're going to begin to move into our time of sacred giving. And right before that, I just want to speak this word over your life. Feel free to get ready for your offering. The prayer still works while you're reaching in your purse or your wallet. So how good it is to have this moment and this opportunity to continue to do what we do. To live this life, to awaken, to study, to expand ourselves. Oh, how good it is to recognize that we are more than this. We are more than an election. We are more than a racial category. We're more than a gender category. We're more than a sexual orientated category. We're more than our address. We're more than any circumstance, any diagnosis, any prognosis. We are more than it. We are all of it. We are all of creation. We are all of life. We are all of the beauty. We are all the love. We are all of the difficulties, the challenges, the expansions, the contractions, and yet infinitely more than this, because God is all there is. And it didn't say it would always be pretty. It didn't say it would always be smooth. There's something special about a stone as it tumbles through the river and it gets tossed to and fro. It might be rough and raggedly still, as the song says, but it gets smoothed out through the course of its journey. And so how grateful I am to know that for each of us, and to know the healing that is taking place in our lives, knowing the opportunity, the expansion, the abundance, the prosperity, the joy, the love, the connection, the clarity, the wisdom, the access to our calling that is so now in a greater way than ever before. I love it. I live it. And I allow it, and I will know it when you can't know it for yourself. We come together in community, and we will hold you when you can't hold on to anything. You can let go and feel safe here, because we know the truth about you. Simply allow it to be, and so it is. Amen. Ushers, go forth, and whatever you're doing as you're doing it in the offering basket, allow it to be the best gift that you can give for the expansion of this community that we know as Soul Center. Arne?
So it's been mentioned more than once that